Welcome to Faith in 5, a weekly video devotional designed to discuss practical spiritual concepts in 5 minutes or less. I'm your host, Mark Vandella. I want to share a story with you that starts not so fun, not so great, but ends really well and ends beautifully. It's a story about the first funeral I ever did, and it was arguably the most difficult. Not just because it was the first one, but because it was for a friend of mine, somebody I'd developed a relationship with, a former youth group kid of mine named Eric. And to add a layer of complexity to it and difficulty to it, Eric took his own life. And so as we processed what had happened and prepared to celebrate his life, which he had one of the best spirits. Actually, in this funeral, one of the things that the family really wanted to do to honor Eric was, instead of the normal meet and greet at a church service where you'd stand and shake a hand, Eric was a hugger. And so we actually had everybody kind of go to the person next to him and give him a big hug. Because Eric's presence continues to live on. And I tell you that, like I said, it kind of starts not so great. But a couple weeks ago, I received a phone call from his dad, Richard. And it was Richard inviting me to an event for Stomp Out the Stigma. And so the cool part of that is that Richard, Eric's dad, and his family, his mom and his sister have really stepped up and stepped into this part of their story. See, they've started to attend these regular events on Stomp Out the Stigma so that they could help people talk more about the feelings that people might be having that would lead them to suicide, and the things that you could maybe notice and realize and prevent. And then they've also participated in a suicide outreach program where they are available as volunteers to families who are experiencing similar things to what they went through with the loss of their son. And see, as we're working through this series called Tell It Well, based on a book by Jennifer Spolma, we're trying to talk about in the second part of this series is how do we own our stories? And the first step to owning our stories beyond discovering them is that we need to own what's happened to us. And as we look at either the good, the bad, or even some of the indifferent, once we own that, we can redeem that brokenness. We can redeem it in a way that it becomes part of our story. If I were to ask Richard, would you do it again? If you could do it again, would you want it to go the same way? I'm confident he would say no. It'd be much better to have his son here with us, but because it's a part of their story, they are living it out in such a beautiful way. And Jenny says in her book, she says that the moment that she accepted her story, right, she accepted the grace that God gives her and the fact that she has some insecurities. And she knows that she has limits, and she knows that there's places she's not good enough. But once she accepted those things, she actually saw that her story had significance beyond her own circumstances. She says, once I could see beyond my own circumstances, I could see that I can help other people. I became more understanding of other people. And Jenny continues to say in her book over and over and over that when we keep our stories to ourselves, we do not only ourselves a disservice, we do the world misses out on so much when we keep our stories to ourselves. So before we can move to the next stage of sharing our story, we need to own the stuff that's gone on in our own lives. And one of the key ways to do that is I believe is really wrestling with or embracing what the Bible says in Hebrews 4:15 through 16. It says that Jesus understands every weakness of ours. See, he's been there, he's been tested, and he's been through everything that we've been through. And yet he survived it. He didn't sin in all of the tests and all of the weaknesses that we as humans face. And so with that being said, Jesus knows what we've been through. He's been through it too, and yet he's come out the other side unblemished. And so Hebrews challenges us to go to Jesus because he knows what we've been through. We can go to him. We can be rest assured that we can go to him and we can ask whatever we want, to ask boldly, and we will be treated with undeserved kindness, and we will find help. So the key to owning our stories is we start thinking through what importance and significance does our story have? What are the unique pieces, and what story is God trying to tell through our lives? One of the things that we can do this week as we think through our stories is ask Jesus, what is it that you're trying to do with me? Maybe reveal some of the vulnerability, some of the pain, some of the brokenness, some of the fears that we have, and put those in front of Jesus and ask him for help, because he has been there. And the Bible says that you will receive the help you need. So this week, as you wrestle with your story and you begin to own and embrace your story, ask some questions of God. Talk to Jesus about what he's doing with you. Because the world will be a better place, and I would argue, and hopefully I can convince you, that your life will be better as you start to own and embrace your own story.